There he was, panicked, in the rain, ill-prepared, calling an early general election which shocked and surprised all of us. He did it, of course, because no flights were going to Rwanda. He did it, of course, because he feared that I'd be back in the front line. Now, he may be relieved to know that I'm not going to stand as a candidate myself.
That was Nigel Farage confirming he won't stand in the general election after Prime Minister Rishi Sunak called the election for the 4th of July 6 months sooner than expected. Now, speculation had been swirling around Nigel Farage and whether he'd be unveiled as a candidate by Reform leader Richard Tice. But Nigel Farage says there's simply not enough time between now and July to run a successful campaign.
Why? 6 weeks isn't long enough to fight a constituency seat and to campaign around the country. The bad news, Mr. Sunak, is I'll be out round the country fighting, campaigning, appearing on media, supporting Richard Tice in absolutely every single way.
Geopolitics and finance expert Roger Gewolb told Sky News it was a strategic move by Rishi Sunak to call the election early to essentially ambush Nigel Farage. Is this a risky strategy with Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party far behind Labor in the polls?
Well, everybody is wondering why in the world would he stand out in the rain, can't even afford an umbrella, and get absolutely soaked while he goes on television and calls a general election today for July the 4th, which happens to be American Independence Day. The main theory going around is that it's because the government is completely out of money. He's not going to be able to make any tax cuts. So he'd be better off, going ahead with that now, rather than making people even more disappointed than they are by waiting later and then announcing no tax cuts. My own theory is something rather different. I think that he and his advisors have done something strategic. They have ambushed Nigel Farage because Farage could either stay as a major UK broadcasting star and end up as a friend of Trump in American politics one way or the other, or he could leave all that and come and head the Reform Party, where he would do tremendous damage to the Tories and Labour. And Farage is not going to make that decision until closer to the US presidential elections in November. So in a rather smart move, Sunak and company have forced his hand by calling the election much sooner, so he's got to make up his mind, which I'm sure he really doesn't want to do right now.
A YouGov poll found that 61% of people in the UK believe that Rishi Sunak was right to call the general election, and just 11% say that he was wrong. Is that the sense that you're getting in the UK? Do Brits tend to love a bold move?
No, I just think it's that people are absolutely so sick of both politicians, both parties. They're both empty. They gaslight. They don't deliver on their promises. Starmer doesn't even make promises. He just talks about, bold things like truth, beauty, justice, stability. He never says how he's going to do it. And a lot of people actually think that there's going to be a hung parliament where nobody can do anything. Well, I have to say, I've been saying there may be a hung parliament, but it's not going to be a well-hung parliament because none of these people have got you-know-whats. I mean, it's a terrible situation.
Rishi Sunak and Labor leader Keir Starmer are now campaigning across the British Isles. Sky News host Peter Credlin says it's unlikely the UK electorate will overlook the Conservative Party's revolving door of Prime Ministers.
Overnight, UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak called a snap election in what can only be described as a train wreck of a press conference. Now, as Prime Minister, he gets to choose the date and the time of the election announcement, same as here. And campaign teams normally launch with a stage set-piece event, a lot of hoopla, the big pitch from the leader, all the bells and whistles, only for reasons that no one can really fathom, reasons that have made him the laughing stock of the British press and perhaps amplify the madness of going 6 months early, Sunak kicked off his re-election bid looking more like a drowned rat than a leader.
Only a Conservative government led by me will not put our hard-earned economic stability at risk, can restore pride and confidence in our country, and with a clear plan and bold action, will deliver a secure future for you, your family, and our United Kingdom.
I mean, can't anyone in Downing Street read a weather forecast? Or was this a panicked move over fears he was about to be rolled by his own party? Now, completely outclassing him was the corresponding launch from Labor, from his opponent, Keir Starmer.
A chance to change for the better. Your future, your community, your country. Now, it will feel like a long campaign, I'm sure of that. But no matter what else is said and done, that opportunity for change is what this election is about.
You've got to love that look, don't you, where only the national flag is behind the national leader. And to politicians and campaigners here in Australia, of course, British elections are always relevant. First, because UK politics is much like our own, much more, I have to say, than perhaps the American system, but also because Britain's a cultural cousin, an important ally, and a key global economy. The Morrison government's trade deal with Britain, the most comprehensive we've done with any country other than New Zealand, plus AUKUS, has made the British relationship more important than it has been for many, many years. The British Labor government, well, that's the overwhelming likely result out of this election. If it eventuates, will give Anthony Albanese something of a soulmate in Downing Street. The Labor leader Starmer is running a very similar strategy to Albanese in opposition. He's promising he'll be safe change. He's making soothing noises to business. He's trying to put Jeremy Corbyn's anti-Semitic extremism behind him and matching Tory pledges on defence. But just like Australian Labor, British Labor is run by the unions. It's instinctively pacifist, it's climate obsessed, it's been weakened by an anti-Jewish fringe, and it's riven by identity politics. I'd like to be surprised, but a Starmer government, whatever it claims now, will almost certainly expand Britain's already bloated bureaucracy, boost unproductive social spending, fail to reform the National Health Service, talk about productivity without actually lifting it, surrender to trans activism and climate extremism, and leave the military unprepared for our challenges ahead. Much like here. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will be warning voters about the risks of Labor.
To decide whether we want to build on the progress we have made or risk going back to square one with no plan and no certainty, because I'm guided by doing what is right for our country, not what is easy. Now, I can't say the same thing for the Labour Party, and that's because they have no plan. There is no bold action. And as a result, the future can only be uncertain with them. He has shown time and time again that he will take the easy way out and do anything to get power. If he was happy to abandon all the promises he made to become Labour leader once he got the job.
But the UK electorate, I think it's unlikely to overlook his own side's revolving door prime ministership, the failure of the Tories to control boat people coming across the channel, out of control legal migration too, and skyrocketing cost of living fuelled by over-reliance on renewables, just because Starmer says Sunak would be a worse alternative. A British Labor government is likely to be bad for Britain and bad for the wider world. But that's what we're almost certainly going to get after 14 years from an often disappointing and mostly mediocre Conservative Party that got Brexit done, but then didn't capitalise on it at all and properly cut ties with the EU. Overseas, just like here in Australia, strong Conservative governments move the whole political spectrum to the right. But weak ones, they allow everything to drift to the left, and they make the next Labor government even worse.